Dr. Jones. For you, violence is always the answer, yes?
When it comes to Nazis, absolutely. I think now is as good a time as any to knock the snot out of some fascists, and thankfully one of the most legendary characters of all time takes pleasure in doing exactly that. I typically cover a character's entire arc in my videos, but the Great Circle sits in a strange spot. The developers don't commit to it being canon, and leave it up to the player to determine if they want it to be canon or not. So I'm keeping things easy and staying within the confines of this incredible game to dole out some justice to scumbags that need a reminder they will not be tolerated. So let's travel the world in pursuit of one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of our time and bust up a few Nazis along the way. Dr. Jones wakes up from a nightmare that the boulder in Disneyland was actually real. A crash can be heard down the hallway, and when Indy investigates, he considers if he's still sleeping or not, since fucking Candyman is intruding without even being called upon. He's no match for Tony Todd though. Rest in peace, and sleeps the rest of the night on the floor. After examining the damage, they find out it's a Jellicle Catman after stealing a mummified pussy from their collection. The giant was sloppy though, accidentally leaving behind a pendant that gives Indiana a raging clue. There are Catholic symbols on it, pointing Indy directly to the Vatican in Italy, and despite being told it's midterms, he dips out, leaving his colleagues to deal with his work with zero notice. He fast travels to Italy, but Mussolini's army is cordoning off Vatican City and making it difficult for Indy to get inside. Which is perfectly fine, because this is when the action starts, and we begin trading blows with fascist scum. Mussolini's black shirts are the next best thing to knocking out a Nazi, and Indiana Jones gets to dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge the blows of several fascists, while also sneaking up on some and hilariously racking the nuts and bashing various weapons over their heads, getting a quick 19 knockouts as he sneaks his way into Vatican City. He meets his friend Antonio, who sneaks him the rest of the way inside and urges him to be careful as the Pope has fallen ill and his temporary replacement, Father Ventura, is a little slut for Mussolini. Antonio fucking gets it before he starts any work with Indy, and eventually examines the pendant. He recognizes the symbol, but if Dr. Jones is going to be roaming around, he has to look the part. He meets Mussolini's rat right after, who is a big-time hater.
In America.
Indiana finds a matching symbol nearby and fucks it with the pendant, opening a secret passage that provides a map. Antonio asks Indy to bring back photos of the locations since he's itching to dance some more and can't be going around looking for some old shit. He recommends stopping by the post office to get a camera, but the dude is like a Pokemon scalper with his prices, and Indiana has to find some extra scratch to take it off his hands, leading to a couple more fascist knockouts using old lefty and righty. He takes their cash and uses that to fund the camera, which is used to snap photos of 4 different inscriptions around the city without a single KO. There's plenty of opportunities to punch fascists, but you have to be smart about it. Otherwise, you may risk your own well-being. You see what I'm talking about? It's all about the opportunities. That dude gets a shit rocked and probably dies after sliding to the ground below, but who cares, because we have some photos to show Antonio. Working through the riddles points Indy to the Tower of Nick 5. An ominous passage hints towards having to use blood, but Antonio uses the power of religion to hand the finest bottle of Christ's Ichor to Indy. When he travels to the tower, that wine really do be looking like blood though, and contains an infinite amount of wine it seems. Indy follows a long abandoned Roman burial ground until he gets to a big stone casket that's far too heavy to move. He ensures it will never get to a museum when he breaks the damn thing, but he gets another clue out of it at least. The fascists above ground desperately want to rain on his parade and barge into the tomb in the most destructive way possible, which means they need to get their teeth kicked in while Indy searches for a way out of this place. He also gets his first 2 official kills when he shoots down a couple guards. They'll be added to the overall count since he's knocking them out too, just permanently. Eventually, he gets back to the area where the bulldozer sits. There's a way out using the hole it created, but this area is heavy on the Italian patrol. Not wanting to cause a big ruckus, Indy rushes one guy from behind, sucker punches him in the back of the head, but fails to actually knock him out. Then hurriedly climbs the bulldozer and gets out of there. A clueless fascist helps Indy up, and before he can react, he gets rocked by Dr. Jones, and considering the fall down to the tomb, he may have died here too. Right after, Indy watches as a suspicious nun does some sneaking of her own and follows her. They have a little back and forth until a massive zeppelin flies overhead, and he confirms the Nazis, with their own archaeological professional, Emmerich Voss, are being helped by Mussolini and Father Ventura. This nun is none other than Gino Lombardi, an Italian reporter whose sister has gone missing and she suspects the Nazis are to blame. Indy now knows her mission, but she gains very little knowledge about his.
I'm looking for a cat.
Cat?
A mummy.
A mummy or a cat?
It's a cat mummy.
Why?
Because a giant from the Vatican stole it from me, and I need to figure out why.
What the fuck are you talking about?
They split up and Indy goes back to Antonio to show him the parchment he got underground. It details a secret order within the Vatican and points him towards the Fountain of Confession nearby, which links him up with Gina yet again. He gets kinda grumpy at her imposing during his little adventure, but that doesn't stop her from staying the path. They open up another underground passage that forces them into participating in some trials that are, a bit problematic. Indy nearly dies down here after an unwarranted demand from the ancient Romans. After passing the trials, they gain access to another chamber and find their way into a room that has recently been used. Approaching steps have them hiding behind some art, which sends them directly to a treasure trove of ancient artifacts and the cat mummy. But again, Candyman is breaking his own rules and showing up unannounced. Indy sets down the aged puss and receives a mean punch by Locus immediately. They go toe to toe and Gina throws shit at him randomly, eventually turning into a knockout, which I won't count because Locus is not a fascist. He's just a protector of antiquities. Mussolini and Father Ventura narrowly miss them as they grant Voss entry. They hide out and listen as Voss remarks on Father's facial muscles.
Ich vertraue ihr darauf, wie die Muskeln ihren Mund zu.
Yeah, it's from eating all that ass! The Nazis begin smashing artifacts, much to Father Ventura's dismay, revealing some hidden stones they stow away inside a briefcase. Indy has to put Locus back to sleep before he wakes up and informs Gina that Voss is researching the Great Circle, which gets him rock hard for discovery. They follow after everyone leaves, and this gives Indiana Jones the opportunity to get his first few Nazi takedowns, with one of them dying. As he ascends the stairs towards the Zeppelin, Father Ventura catches up, noting he's no longer appearing as a man of the cloth. But before he can set his fascist friends on him, big-ass Locus shows up to distract them so Indy can slink off and board the ship with Gina's help. They have a while before they get to Egypt, so Dr. Jones teaches a course on the Great Circle until they arrive. They overhear the beef Voss and this prototype Nazi named Gans have between each other, but once they clear out, they climb out into the sands of Giza. Gina leads Indy to Nawal, a friend who has worked with her sister in the past and is doing a bit of spying for shittles and giggles.
Adolf Hitler, the obnoxious little twit.
A danger noodle browns Indy's pants while the girls catch up. Afterwards, Nawal informs Indy of an office Voss uses in a Nazi compound nearby, but she'll need to procure some work passes before they can safely enter. That will take some time, so while she does that, Gina will monitor radio chatter, and Indiana Jones will roam the immediate area looking for 4 stone steelies he'll hand over to Nawal. During this quest, Indy knocks out 8 Nazis using various tools, but notably hits one so fucking hard his hair changes color. After he gathers all 4 steelies and heads back to Nawal's tent, he listens to a recording from Voss detailing his purpose in the region. He's searching for a particular sanctuary and seems to believe the Sphinx has some vital information on that. But first, they go over the plan once they sneak into the Nazi compound now that the work passes are ready. There's a specific flag Nawal wants them to pull down that will signal her to cause a distraction and allow them to enter Voss's office with little resistance. They work their way inside and wouldn't you know it, Nazis get put in their place. Nawal was just waiting for the signal too, because as soon as they lower the flag, an explosion in the distance pulls in a lot of armed attention. But a skeleton crew stays behind, and Indy continues his beating spree, adding 6 more hateful DBs to the count. They drop down into Voss's office, finding Laura's journal that has plenty of fascinating details on ancient languages. While rifling through his office, they spot the little weasel in the distance.
I see a Nazi.
They make that their next destination and do so without being seen. They take in the drama of 2 piece of shit Nazis at each other's throats, with one vehemently announcing his love for old Adolf. Blondie gets a nice concussion after Indy and Gina fall through the ceiling and knock him out, leaving Voss there stunned. Gina ensures he can't pull any fuck shit while Dr. Jones examines the body of the dead giant lying on the table, noting the ink on this fool and his self-inflicted ritualistic blindness. Gina demands to know where her sister is, and Voss stokes the flames of her anger by insinuating she is working with him willingly.
No!
Hell yeah, hit him again. But then the test tube Nazi wakes up and chaos ensues in a classic Indiana Jones scuffle. I get my wish when Indy breaks Voss's nose with a nice bow to the face, but Gantz is able to knock Indy out for a short period while Gina attempts to settle things down with a gun. Instead, Voss does this insane cat pounce that just barely saves Gantz as the bullet grazes his cheek. She squeezes that freshly broken nose but stands up too fast and stuns herself and nearly kills Gantz yet again, this time barely missing his other set of cheeks. Gantz is probably more upset at the ruined Führer painting, but thanks Voss for saving his life. While they trade words, Indiana had time to recover and gains a double knockout with a single chair. They attempt to sneak out, but the alarm goes off and they're forced into an all-out sprint while Nawal closes the passage behind them. Gina gets separated from them in the collapsed tunnels, so Indy and Nawal work their way through some tunnels until a set of hieroglyphics confirms Indiana Jones should be examining the Sphinx after this. They locate a small passage they can escape out of, but a Nazi happens to be chilling there and nearly offs Nawal before Indy can feed him a knuckle sandwich. Nawal heads back to her tent while Dr. Jones makes his way to the Sphinx and is able to work out the message hidden on the large stele. King Khufu's pyramid just west of there holds a secret, and he's able to find his way inside and work through some puzzles without further violence. He eventually finds himself in a very dark chamber with the only light coming from his lighter and the small rays of sunlight made available using the plates on the ground. While examining his surroundings, a voice muttering in ancient language comes up from behind him and he's faced with battling this giant in the dark. Thankfully, these motherfuckers intentionally blind themselves, so Indy's crouch technique is super effective, allowing him to skirt around the guy to deliver several sneak attacks till he's kind of over this nonsense and just shoots the dude in the head. Again, I won't actually count him here since, like Locus, he's not a fascistic enemy, just merely protecting something ancient. Indy grabs his pendant, and before passing on, the giant issues an incomplete warning. His pendant was a key to accessing the Idol of Ra, which Indy regretfully shatters to obtain the stone within. But as is tradition in this universe, this triggers King Khufu's trap card. He's able to escape, but he lingers too long in one spot and winds up getting trapped by sand right as Voss pulls up. He gleefully takes the stone off his hands and, thinking himself untouchable, gets in Indy's face to taunt him, but he immediately regrets it. Sitting there unable to move means Indy is not a threat, so he listens in as Voss sends Gantz on a trip to the Himalayas to investigate the last known location of a crew that was last seen in Peru. Before leaving, Voss places Indy's hat on his head so he can slowly cook in the hot Egyptian sun, where he has to blow on some scorpions to survive. Luckily, Gina and Nawal dig him out, and he barely has time to recover before he's bombarded with details. Gina's sister uncovered a stone in Machu Picchu, and after listening in to the Nazis over the radio, got exact coordinates of their destination in the Himalayas. Their guide is sick of these motherfucking avalanches on this motherfucking mountain and abandons these two psychos in the snow. They eventually set their eyes on something that should be impossible. The Nazi battleship has somehow gone from the Pacific all the way to the top of a mountain. They work their way inside, finding a ton of frozen Nazis on board.
You mean they didn't know how to handle it?
Hand it over.
Will it come in handy?
That's enough.
But among the dead Germans is a recognizable face that devastates Gina and brings the search for her sister to a close. After she takes time to mourn, she expresses her intent to find out how this happened, and Indy vows to assist. He picks up a folder found near her side and can barely read it before Nazis show up and crash the party, as they tend to do. Gina takes one and Indy gets the other, going on a spree of knockouts and kills, as he's more than willing to shoot them if necessary, and even puts them in some awkward positions when they wake up. After clearing the way, they enter the captain's quarters and solve their elementary riddle to unlock the safe room where the captain is found with a stone. Indy is unable to wrestle it free before they hear someone approaching.
What was that?
Nazi.
The Nazi doesn't have the patience to try and pry the stone free, however. But simply obtaining it doesn't satisfy the guy. No, because he has to look around the room too. Gina pops out to distract him and gives Indy the opportunity to surprise attack him, which starts another sloppy scuffle that sends the stone towards Gina and puts both the Nazi and Dr. Jones in timeout when Gantz arrives. This dude really didn't wear a hat just so his hair can flow in the wind. He rambles on about legacy, but commits an unforgivable crime.
What you have is your stupid American cartoons. Choo-choo! Choo-choo!
Obviously, he didn't grow up with Saturday morning cartoons. Before Gantz shoots Indy, Gina pops up again with that impeccable timing, telling Gantz she has the stone and hands it over. Psych, that's a grenade, bitch! He tosses it and the explosion results in an avalanche, making the ship unstable on its new mountaintop home. The resulting fistfight ends when Indy tosses Gantz over the railing, but it won't count since we do not see a confirmed knockout or death, but the ship's instability is their utmost concern. After swinging and climbing their way around the ship, both Indy and Gina wind up on the mast as Gantz seeks to join them. Gina ponders if the stone is to blame for bringing the ship there in the first place, and Indiana rapidly uses his knowledge to suss out how to activate it, just as they plummet to certain death. A portal sends them to a Chinese tea shop, which becomes Gantz's final resting place as he declares himself invincible, while a large shard of glass confirms that's inaccurate. Immediately afterwards, Indy shouts for Gina, who pops up unharmed with the stone in hand. But there's a huge problem. They're in the middle of a Japanese attack on Shanghai. They use the buildings for cover, and Indiana Jones earns himself a new and exciting opportunity to add a new type of fascist to his punch-out list. They spot a downed plane big chillin' on the rooftops that Gina knows how to fly, but she's a little too eager to leave and nearly splats Indiana into a building. He climbs up just in time to battle their Japanese pilot pursuers, definitely killing them as he blows their planes up. And with each plane having 2 men on board, that culminates in 14 kills. But the unexpected fighting damaged their plane, so the dipshits flying directly next to them get bounced for another 2 knockouts, possibly kills here, but who knows in this universe. He helps Gina board their new aircraft, and they finally get a bit of peace as they leave the Battle of Shanghai for another site in the Great Circle, Sukhothai. Both the Germans and Italians have beaten them there though, but thankfully don't recognize them so they can access the nearby hotel without conflict. Indy calls back home only to get fired and get the poop scared out of him by Locust issuing a warning. Gina hands over his room key, completely missing the giant in the room, and they meet upstairs where things get a little flirty. An explosion interrupts their moment and things quickly deteriorate as fascists attack the hotel and Siamese rebels return fire. Indy arms himself and kills a single Italian, but mostly stays out of the fight in favor of finding a way out while fire spreads within the building. The rebels guide Indy and Gina to their boat and head downriver as they're questioned by the distrustful locals. Turns out, Voss is already here, so they're wary of outsiders. Pai Lin, the rebel leader, introduces her father Sunan, who puts Indy through an initiation to prove his worth. They claim the pot is cursed with magic and contains his greatest fear: snakes. Wait.
ไส้หมู ทำแกงอร่อยนะ
They agree to help him find the stone to ensure it stays out of greasy Nazi fingies. They get some rest and under Pai Lin's direction visit Tong Dang, who sells breathing devices for long underwater ventures, but those bitches are hella expensive and force Indiana on a detour to raid a Nazi compound where he steals their
Gold!
which results in a couple more KOs with 1 German and 1 Italian getting embarrassed. This provides him more than enough cash to purchase the device and set them on their path. After finding the marker, Indy swims underwater and follows the tunnel to earn a chance at solving this puzzle. They continue on, locating a sunken pyramid that appears to be home to someone already, including a very large snake. This stressful ass section forces Indy into a swimming area where the snake is hunting him. This is the only way inside the pyramid, however, and eventually it puts him into a fight with the snake. He impales it with some perfectly placed tridents, which cause it to slither off so Indiana can finally pull Gina up to join him. They play a little game to reveal an ancient map. Indy snaps a photo of it right before it's blocked off by Locust's big ass. Knowing a fight is inevitable, Indy gets the first hit in, and Gina tosses a rock at him, but seemingly misses until it actually breaks the floor under him. Issue is, it does the same for the rest of the room and sends Indiana down to go fisticuffs with Giant Candyman yet again. After a couple of minutes of wailing on each other, the biggest danger noodle ever attacks, but Indy's hatred for snakes outweighs his desire to beat Locust, so he helps by impaling it one more time, which leads to its eventual death. Before they start beating each other off some more, Gina belittles their manhoods, which gives Indy the chance to knock Locust out for a 3rd time. Needing someone to decipher the map, they get back to the village and Sunan is able to help. The location is nearby and they work splendidly as a team.
Throw me a torch. Oh! Thanks.
They enter a room and Gina recognizes what's going on immediately.
Jones, it's the game.
God damn it, Gina, you made me lose. They pull in some villagers who, at Indiana's direction, help solve the game and open the path forward. Only Indy advances though, and that's a good thing, because shortly after picking up the idol, something HBO never should have done, the immediate area begins to collapse. He smashes that thing and snatches the stone, yelling at the others to GTFO while he does the same. Locust was waiting outside though and takes both stones off of Dr. Jones. But right as he lightens Indy's load, Voss and a few of his cronies show up, calling Indiana Jones a little man.
Better than being a Nazi.
That's true. He pulls an Elon Musk and immediately taunts Gina about her dead sister like he's speedrunning being a dirtbag. Then they suddenly open fire on them and Locust uses his vast amounts of mass to ensure their safety. There's fascist-friendly fire which you love to see, but even better is when the rebels open fire on Voss and his small guard. Indeed, Gina and Locust get in a boat to get away with the stones. But those Italians are extra pesky today, so Indiana shows them what Gary is like in his namesake state, adding 16 kills in his bloodiest confrontation to date. They're eventually overwhelmed though, with their boat being rendered immobile, and some armored vehicles showing up to open fire. So Locust encourages everyone to swim and they dive overboard. As Indy hangs on for dear life, he watches as Gina is taken by Voss, who gets his little testes popped. Indiana hurriedly makes toward land to free her, knocking out 1 Italian and killing 3 others. He arrives too late though. but he earns a friend in Locus, who accompanies him to a rock in the final site of the Great Circle. With Locus's strengths, their gates are useless, and this guy's spine is almost certainly destroyed. In the distance, they spot Gina and Voss, who happens to look in their direction, and Locus barely even tries to hide. Hey, yeah, you! I can see your big ass head! Locus uses the song of his people to call in backup, and directs Indy to use the distraction to free Gina and fucking get. While most of the fascists are getting beaten to a pulp by some giants, Indiana is racking up some knockouts with a wide assortment of tools. He frees Gina, but she's a bad influence on him. She convinces him to see what all those stones do instead of just getting out of there. Truthfully, he didn't need much convincing when there's plenty of Nazi heads to knock around. They take an elevator down into an underground ziggurat, bearing witness to the end result of the giant attack. Locus is nowhere in sight though, but Noah's Ark most definitely is, completely ruined with some ugly ass drapes. Indy hands the stones over to Gina just in case he's captured, then moves carefully down below where 3 more Nazis are concussed with extreme prejudice. He enters a tent to find Locus extremely knocked out, which at this point has you really concerned for his health since he's spending half of his time not fully aware. Voss uses that distraction to disarm Indy, who claims he doesn't need a gun to knock his teeth in.
I have mastered the lethal Japanese hand-to-hand combat art of karate.
Okay, Sandy Cheeks, whatever you say. Since no one else in his life gives a shit, Voss uses this little hostage situation to talk to Indiana about his findings, specifically the Great Flood. Noah used the stones to travel the world quickly to gather animals in preparation for it. And afterwards, the stones were hidden around the world and eventually lost to time, only remembered by the giants who protect them. He plays a recording that confirms Gina's sister was not working with Voss fully and elected to die before handing the stone to him. This pulls Gina in from her hiding spot outside the tent. But the gun is empty, and now her pockets are too when the Nazis pull the stones from them. They're taken up to the Ark, which is pulled out onto the water, and the trio of heroes are tied up together and watch as Voss places the stones into the Ark one by one, with intent to use them to transport Nazis across the globe in an instant and conquer the world. While he focuses on that, Gina loosens her hairpin so they can use the sharp end to cut free. Voss's flair for the dramatic makes him look insanely foolish too.
What did you think would happen?
After a few moments, rain starts coming down, initiating a massive flood accompanied by lightning strikes that take down some Nazis. Voss is pissed and eager to show off his karate skills, which aren't enough to defeat an expert brawler such as Indiana Jones. The chaos throws them both off, sending them overboard and dangling on either end of Indy's whip. Gina eventually defeats her foe and extends a helping hand, allowing Indiana to let go of the whip and putting Voss in a precarious situation. Meanwhile, Locus pilots the Ark as some magic fuckery occurs, yet Voss sticks around like a Nazi flight of shit and focuses his hatred on the giant instead.
This is Maya!
Oh, shut up. His life force is drained from him, thank God, and Locus urges both Indy and Gina to jump. The Ark disappears into who knows where, and the flood immediately recedes, granting the two heroes some much needed peace, but perhaps more importantly, gets Indiana Jones his hat back. Fast forward a little ways, and Indiana is seeing Gina off before she boards a plane. She turns down his offer to do some sightseeing, citing an upcoming war that desperately needs to be covered by good reporters. She suggests he find her when it's all over though.
I'd like that.
And that's where Indiana Jones and the Great Circle ends. There's still plenty of field work to do, but I'll leave that for myself in my own personal time. Indiana Jones knocked out a hell of a lot of people, resulting in plenty of brain trauma and body bags before stopping the Nazis from getting a powerful weapon. He finished his adventure with a total of 125 knockouts, with 43 of those resulting in confirmed death. Firearms were the most frequently used weapon, with most resulting in kills, but a few of those were being used for blunt force trauma. They resulted in just over 35% of the total KOs, whereas Indiana's fist came second with 20.8% of the count. But that shouldn't discount the other knockouts, with a fly swatter being a particularly hilarious weapon to use. Even though Nazis tend to be the main enemy in Indiana's adventures, they actually came second in the count. Mussolini's soldiers were Indy's primary victim at 44.8% of the total count, but Nazis were very close behind at 41.6%. It took me 12 hours and 58 minutes to complete the game, which gives us a kill or knockout every 6.2 minutes. I know this is a bit different than my normal kill count, This game is a ton of fun, and I just had to make a video with it. Even though the reviews all said this game was good, I didn't expect to like it nearly as much as I did. It's like putting Indiana Jones in a kind of Riddick or Dishonored type gameplay, yet making it feel exactly like the universe we got to know in the movies. I hope Machine Games makes a sequel to this game because I am already itching for another fantastic Indiana Jones adventure. And that about does it for this game. Thanks as always for watching. I'm King Deschain, signing off for now.